Hi everyone, my name is Mr. Chasson and I welcome you to my channel. In today's editing video, I'm going to show you how to edit skies to make them beautiful and vibrant using Capture One for Fujifilm. So without waiting any longer, let's go to the computer. Okay, so here we are in Capture One for Fujifilm. The first thing I want to touch, the first tip, is the exposure of the sky. It's important to have a good exposure of the sky, not to be too bright or too dark. The reason is, especially when it comes to the whiter area, they're really easy to blow out. So if we go in closer, here you can see that some part of the sky, the clouds, are actually all white. There's no detail. You don't see any sort of detail in this part. This is normal. I've taken a shot with the sun right in the shot, so this is kind of normal to have these kind of white areas around the sun because the sun is super bright. You see all around here, and especially this one, you can see this is just white. There's no gradient of gray in there. It's pure white. But if you start to go away and let's say you'd be at this area here, now you see gradients of gray. But if that was, for example, all white, if I raise the exposure, if you add something like this, now you're losing detail, and that doesn't look as good in the shot. So the first thing is to really adjust your shot so that your sky and especially the clouds are not blown out. If you have the sun, that's fine. If you don't, then if your areas where the sun is not close, you should be able to see details in there. So you got to make sure the tools you can use is exposure warning at the top right of Capture One will put in red the areas that are pure white, so where you lose detail. In this shot, I find this is really okay, but let's say that you have a shot that might be maybe too bright like this. So what can you do to recover? Well, there's the exposure slider you can use, but keep in mind the exposure slider it affects the whole shot. So if you raise and lower this exposure, I'll just remove this for now. If you raise and lower the exposure slider, it affects everything in the shot. And you lower here, you see. Now what you want, let's say you've got an overexposed sky like this, is you use the highlight slider. The highlight slider will only affect the parts of the image that are the highlights, the brighter parts of the image, without touching everything that's not a bright part of the image. The white slider will affect only what is really bright. I don't use it all that much, but it can be, maybe remove some of the details. As you can see, it gives you back some of the details in the really brighter area, but usually I don't do that. The other thing, if you have a sun like this in your shot, you want to be careful not to go down, and this one actually looks good, the rays are good, but sometimes if you lower the highlights too much, and you'll just have like a white dot in the sky, which doesn't look good. You'd be better to keep sort of a glow around the sun, because it's the sun, it's supposed to be bright. So let's say for this shot we'll go with something maybe like this. I'll just adjust the foreground to be a little brighter. That doesn't have anything to do with the sky, maybe. Alright, so that's for the exposure. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is the color of the sky. Obviously, people see the blue of the sky in different ways. So what are the things that you can do to affect the color of the sky? The first thing is your camera profile that you use. Here I have classic chrome. I like classic chrome, not everybody likes it. If you want more saturation, you can start off with Asia or even Velvia. So let's say we want a really bright sky. So we'll keep the Vivid Velvia theme here. So we have a really bright blue sky. The other thing that will affect the blueness of the sky or the color of the sky is the temperature of the shot. So if you've got, if you've got an evening shot, you may want to warm it a little bit, maybe add a little bit of magenta, but this is definitely not a sunset thing by any means. Well, not far from there, but here we could maybe make it a little cooler so that the green is a little cooler and the sky. So that's the second thing you can do to adjust the color. And finally, the other thing that I like to use is you go to your color tab in the color editor, and there you can sort of manipulate the sky to look a little differently. So I tend to like the sky to be a little bit more in the what's the name of that color? I forgot. I'll write it on this screen, of course. A little bit more towards the greener side, but that's a personal choice for me. I like it more like this. We can look at before and after. Before and after. I kind of tend to like it more like this. That's a personal choice. If you don't, that's fine. The other thing you can adjust here is the saturation of the sky. You can make it a lot more bluer or a lot less bluer. Usually one of these two will affect the sky. This one doesn't affect it much here. It's mostly the blue one. So let's go for something like this. Maybe we want to even a little bit more. And you can darken the blues also, which makes for a really contrasty shot. So these are a few things that you can do to adjust the color of your sky. Now the third thing to look for to make your sky pop out and look really good is the contrast and clarity of the sky. Now here again, it's a choice. You got to make a choice of having either a contrasty clouds or softer clouds. Some people prefer softer clouds, some people prefer the contrasty clouds. There's no right answer here, as long as you're, maybe consistent in your shots and things like that. So, but it is again a personal choice. So there's two things you can do to, well, more than two, but I'll show you two things you can do to affect that. There's the contrast slider, of course, that you can raise the contrast a lot, and now you see the dark is really dark, the brighter parts are really bright, and the blue pops out even a little bit more. That's to the extreme. Let's say we want to increase it a little bit. I rarely lower the contrast. I find that this gives an odd color to the clouds. So instead, if you want softer clouds, I think the clarity slider works a lot better. You can lower the clarity. So this will create a little bit more softer looking clouds. Or if you really like the contrasty ones, some people like the clouds to look like this. And sometimes with fisheye lens like these, it can look really impressive. So there's two ways here. I'll go a little bit softer, but again, it is a personal choice that you have to make when you edit your skies. And finally, the fourth thing is the use of a grad filter to just affect your sky. So everything that we just did, if you find that it affects too much the rest of your scene, you can use a grad filter like this to only affect your sky. So usually, well, now my horizon isn't straight. Usually unless you use a fisheye lens like this, usually the horizon is straight. So the grad filter will do a good job at following your horizon better than this. So now you can do all the same things that we just did, but only affect the sky. And often people like to lower the exposure of the sky, make it a little darker at the top. You could do something like that to have it more from dark to bright. Or you could just affect the color, you know, of the sky if you want more warmth in the clouds. Same thing if you want to adjust only the highlights in the sky. Actually, I like that a little better for this one. Like I said, if you have a sun in your shot, you should have like a sort of a glow around the sun. And again, you could play with the clarity if you want to just affect the clarity there. So the grad filter is something that you can use to only affect your sky. So if oftentimes when you take pictures, the sky will be too bright or too dark, and the foreground will be, you know, bright enough, or vice versa. So it's a good way to just adjust the exposure, especially for the sky, and have the rest of your shot not being affected by that. All right, so I hope that was helpful, and that you've learned a little bit about what you can do to edit your skies and make them look much better and more vibrant and really pop out. And again, there are many choices that you can make to go in your own directions in this, and that's something that I just keep telling, and I'll keep telling you, is that, you know, I'm just one person. I edit in a certain way. Like I said, I like my sky color in a certain way, and you know, I like softer clouds. Maybe you like the more contrasty clouds, and that's perfectly fine. So I hope you enjoyed. If you have your own tips and tricks or things that you like to do in Capture One for your skies, just post them in a comment. If there's other questions that you have also, and with that, see you in the next video. Bye bye.